Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Mooncast. Today I'm going to be talking to Tom again. We're going to be talking about the Leshavult faction, which is a brand new faction coming to Kickstarter soon. It's very exciting. We don't quite get through all of the models because it's just getting a bit too long, but we get through a good chunk. I think we talk mainly about 9 of them, and we'll leave the rest of them for another podcast, but I hope you enjoy listening to the first few. So let's go and get Tom on the line. Tom's on the line. We're going to talk about the Leshavult, like I said, which is very exciting. We're doing this recording before the Kickstarter started. So at the moment, we don't know how the Kickstarter's gone. I'm going to make an assumption it's gone really well. We will hit every stretch goal and it will be great. And if that doesn't happen, I'm going to look like a wally, but it doesn't really matter.
Well, I'll look like a wally. You'll look fine.
But yeah, we're going to go through as many characters as we can, because there's quite a lot in the Kickstarter, which is great, and they all look awesome. So we'll go through as many as we can, and if we start realising we've gone on too long, then we'll stop this podcast and we'll do another one about the rest of them. And
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, from an entirely selfish point of view, I can't help but start talking about Leshavult without talking about Brother Daniel first.
Fair enough. Do your listeners know?
I don't know. I don't know. Why don't you tell them that? I sound really vague.
So, Brother Daniel is a character created in honour of your Mooncast host, Daniel.
Yeah, which was very nice. And when you told me about it at the Games Expo in the pub, I was very flattered then, and it was really fun to help design both. Help sort of choose the artwork for him and things, and help design his cards as well. That was really fun. I really enjoyed doing that.
And I know you've touched on this briefly on previous episodes, but there are a few characters in Moonstone that are loosely or less loosely based on real people, and it's quite good fun for us, kind of weaving in these fairy tale fantasy storylines with real people that we know in real life. It kind of just adds to the charm, I think.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, let's start with so we'll start with that troop box. The end is nigh. So we'll talk about Brother Daniel, Kavanagh the Jongler, and is it Callista?
Callista, yeah.
That wasn't for the pronunciation. It's Callista.
Callista, yeah. It's her name is. Richie would probably give a much better explanation of this, but it's Hindu inspired from She Who Is Most Beautiful, with a couple of little alterations. But I think Callista is She Who Is Most Beautiful, and he's combined it with a Eastern European name. So that's where that comes from.
Cool. I'm not surprised that Richie managed to find an obscure name.
Oh, I'm not surprised either. Richie's backgrounds and namings tend to have at least 3 layers deep. There's normally at least 3 different references to different cultures and movies and God knows what. So I just do the stupid ones, you know. I come up with names like Baron von Fancy. That's about my cute level of intellectuality.
That's brilliant. Anyway, let's look at. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll go through Daniel's card first because it's quite fun.
You should, because you were pretty influential in creating it. I think you created about 80 or 90% of the rules.
I can't most of it. Yeah, you took most of it. So he's got melee 3, so that's kind of average. So he's not awful, but he's not a beast in melee. 2-inch melee because he's holding a massive sign. An arcane 4 and evade 0, like most humans. I definitely went for the whimsical side of things when I decided to name his abilities. Because it was Richie who wanted to have the once per game ability where you could make someone re-roll, which I wasn't sure about to start with, but actually I think it's quite a fun little thing to have because there aren't many things like that. once per game abilities, and it's quite nice.
It worked absolutely brilliantly for me in my last playtest game with Brother Daniel. I rolled a 1 and my opponent rolled a 2 on the final turn of the game. And I made him re-roll, thinking there's absolutely no chance of this being useful. And he rolled a 1, and then we had to re-roll, roll off together. And he was maddened. Let's say he was not just slightly maddened; he was very maddened.
That's why I wanted to call it slightly maddening, because it's not awful and it might only work every now and then, but it would be slightly annoying if it happened.
It was for him.
Because I've used it twice, and none of the times it worked, but it's one of those times that if it hasn't worked 2 times and the third time it does, it's really, really irritating for your opponent. Not necessarily game changing, but just that's a bit annoying.
It's like Friar Flavis's Divine Intervention. You don't get it off that often, but when you do, it's brilliant, and it's the same as slightly maddening.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, that's a nice little one, a nice little thing. You get make your opponent re-roll their initiative roll, and then look at the shiny thing. And that's the idea. That comes the idea that he's a bit mad and he just gets distracted very easily. Look at that shiny thing on the floor. It is actually an incredibly powerful ability for him, though.
I think one of the things about Brother Daniel, and he doesn't immediately at first glance look like he's super powerful, but my God, is he super powerful sometimes. He's a real facilitator with that look at the shiny thing. One of the big themes of these Leshavult characters is that, there's a lot of them with 3 energy, but a super powerful spell that they can only get off if they've got 4 energy. And he's got probably the most flexible way of giving out that extra energy to enable the rest of the characters.
Yeah, well, because he gives it before anyone activates, and that's the most important thing. He gives it in the replenish step. A lot of others, like Kavanagh, can give out 1 energy, but you have to activate.
Yeah.
And what I found in our last playtest, which was when we played our 3-player game, which is up on the channel, and I was using the Leshavult, is that it basically meant I could just summon as many bunnies as I wanted.
Because
you're usually in most Moonstone drops, there's 1 Moonstone near your deployment zone.
Yeah.
So Daniel went and grabbed that first Moonstone in turn 1, and it meant in turn 2, turn 3, and turn 4, he could give 1 Moonstone. He could give 1 extra energy to Boris turn 2 and 3. I think he then gave 1 to Kavanagh rather than Boris in turn 4. I can't remember exactly. But yeah, that reliable additional energy was really useful.
There's pretty much every character in the Leshavult will want that extra energy. So you're going to have a difficult decision every turn of who do you give it to, because they've all got something awesome that they can do with it.
Yeah, definitely. I think he works quite well with. Well, he works well with all of them, like you say, because he can give that extra energy. But particularly well, I found with Boris, because not only can he give the Boris the extra energy before Daniel's activated, what I found was he gave Boris the energy. Boris summoned a bunny, and then when Daniel came his turn, he did plant a placard and move that bunny 2 inches forwards.
Nice.
Just brilliant. And also, I mean, coming down to I actually used the placard quite a lot in that game, and again, it meant that I used it and it got Kavanagh 2 inches closer to a Moonstone. He could then jog, grab with his energy, and then step back. Whereas if I hadn't done that, he would have had to use energy to get to the Moonstone, would have been stuck next to it, not having it up.
I would actually say Brother Daniel is one of the most subtly powerful characters that I've ever seen. His abilities don't look at first glance that great, but they're so versatile. All of them are so useful.
Yeah. And then Bellringer is just a nice. It's not like a really powerful heal, but it does affect all. So it's good against. It's good if your characters have all suffered a couple of wounds. Like, for example, if they suffered wounds from like a catastrophe, from someone's catastrophe, like the witches have got catastrophes where everyone suffers wounds within a certain distance. And he can just go, okay, it's okay, I'll heal you all now.
Yeah, or if you've been cursed by a witch, because one of the witches can put a curse on people, and it makes everyone in proximity suffer 1 wound at the end of the turn. So in situations like that, it's quite useful. It's quite an interesting alternative to the standard heal. He's got a slightly weaker, but it's a proximity heal that heals everyone within 4 inches, which is pretty cool.
And then obviously, what is, I think, what I hope, does immediately look like a really powerful ability, and is also enormously frustrating for your opponent and hilarious for you, is the End is Nigh.
Yeah, it's staggeringly powerful. I mean, it's a 4 energy ability, and he's only got 3 energy, so he needs someone like Kavanagh to help out. A lot of the synergies in the Leshavults are, whereas you've got kind of gnome and pirate aura-based synergy, the Leshavult are much more of the activation order based synergy. So you need to activate the right person before some other person gets a better effect when they activate. So the End is Nigh is one of the most powerful spells in the game, I would say. It's brilliant.
Yeah. I used it in, like I say, in that 3-player game that we did, and it won me the game. I used it in time.
For the sake of the listeners who might not have seen the card, the End is Nigh effectively allows you to teleport a friendly model to within 3 inches of another model who's already on the board. So if there's somebody running away with a Moonstone about to escape, you can zap your Kaufman right next to him and bribe the Moonstone off him, or whatever. Lots of uses.
Yeah. It's also got an interesting range. So it started as 3x and we reduced it to 2x. Did we reduce the range?
Well, they're still in playtesting at the moment.
Yeah.
So
but the range is random. So which is also a bit difficult for him, really. I mean, you're likely to get the red you want. He's got Arcane Force. You should get the red. But if you only get a red 1 and the model you want to teleport is 3 inches away, then you still can't cast it. Well, you could do it on himself, but which is actually what I used it for. He teleported himself all the way to pretty much the other side of the board, just about within 3 inches of one model. It happened to mean you could come in contact with a Moonstone, which he would then be able to dig up, because only because I did it at the end of turn 3, and then at the beginning of turn 4, I got first activation, picked up that Moonstone, and there was absolutely no way that anyone could get it from him because they were all 8 or 9 inches away.
Yeah, it's an incredibly flexible ability.
Yeah, it's also fun because you can also do it on the enemy. So it's both. It's just model. Choose a model within 3x. So if you've got an enemy that you don't like, let's say Fritz has got a bit too close, you just teleport him over the other side of the board.
Yeah.
Which should just be like I haven't used it like that yet because I haven't had Daniel get that close to sort of big hitters. But I can imagine that'd just be hilarious.
I mean,
it turns getting the Baron all the way up to try and hit someone, and then he just pushes him all the way back over the other side.
It is absolutely brilliant. I mean, the difficulty with these Leshavult is you've got so many of these really powerful abilities, and it's just choosing which one you can do. But I actually used Brother Daniel because he's Commonwealth Leshavult. I actually used him in my last playtest with some normal Commonwealth, including the Librarian who's coming out this year, and she's got good abilities to move energy onto people, so you can get quite good use out of some of these Leshavult superpowers when you combine with her.
Can she take her ability? Sorry, and it's a bit of a tangent, but can she take energy off any friendly model?
Yeah.
So she'd be really good with Boris then, and just takes him energy off a bunny that you don't really need to use.
Yeah. She's going to be again another one of these deceptively powerful characters who aren't, we tend to think of the more powerful characters as the ones that deal a lot of damage, but there's going to be a few characters coming along this year that are powerful because of their control play and their positional play and some of the sneaky tricks that they can do rather than just damage dealing.
Yeah, definitely. If we'll just finish off Daniel with his signature move, which is called Thwack, because he's just smacked someone in the face with his big sign. Fairly high damage. That may need to change if it's too high, but we haven't really tested it enough yet. But one thing I like about it added to which is the end step effect, which is the opponent suffers -1 melee stat to the end of the turn. Because the idea that you just hit them really hard in the head with a big sign. It's just like terminal, but they're a bit sort of reeling from it, and they're a bit like, ugh. And he's probably screaming at them about the end of his night at the same time, and they're a bit overwhelmed by it.
Yeah, it's a very visual, like a lot of the. I mean, I can see Kavanagh's coming up in a second, and he's got an even more visually impactful signature move.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that most of the signature moves you can picture in your head what's going on, and Daniel is smacking someone in the face with a massive, great big placard, and it's amusing. Before we move on from Brother Daniel, I just wanted to quickly mention his catastrophes because it's another theme of the Leshavolts, which is quite an interesting one. So his bell ringer is all characters within the pulse suffer 1 wound. So if he gets a catastrophe, he does 1 wound to everyone within 4 inches, which means you might sometimes want to play a catastrophe. You might want to run him into the middle of a group of people and then have a catastrophe. And his the end is nigh ability also has quite an interesting catastrophe. This character's controller must choose either to have him suffer 4 wounds or be removed from play. So having Brother Daniel suffer 4 wounds is awful. Being removed from play is potentially worse, but it's also potentially better because the removed from play is different from slain. If you're removed from play, you get to keep your moonstones. So there's situations where in both cases you might actually want the catastrophe to happen, which is good because it gives you extra cards in your hand that might be useful, because not just the pinks that he's looking for to trigger these abilities, but also catastrophes. So that's 3 extra cards that might be useful, but also it gives you a bit more confidence when you're bluffing these abilities, because in certain situations the catastrophe might actually be to your benefit.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's a big theme for all of the Leshavult characters.
Yeah, and we'll get to some that can actually directly benefit others with that and later as well. So if we move on to Kavanagh next, Kavanagh the Jongler, who's a little gnome. I actually think he's, and I know I've seen the artwork for some of the newer ones, he's, of the current artwork we've got at this current date I'm talking to you, he's the freakiest looking little man ever.
Isn't he?
I think that he's the epitome of a creepy clown, really. But it's the massive forehead that I find really freaky.
It's pretty horrific, isn't it? I hope. Yeah, I hope he didn't cause any offence to Jack.
No, he did. Jack thought it was hilarious, actually. No, he was very happy. But yeah, so we'll quickly go through his card. So he's got melee 3 as well, which is a nice. Melee 3 is a nice average, I think. I think with melee 3, it means if you're the attacker, you're getting 5, which is a good number to get. You're going to get at least 1 card you want. But it means when you're the defender, you're not totally screwed. Range 1, standard, arcane 3, and evade -1. He's an interesting one in the sense that he's, I would say, also one that's not immediately evidently powerful, but I would also find it hard not to take him.
I mean, he's another facilitator with his black comedy. Target cultist suffers 2 wounds and gains +1 energy. So he's a great one for allowing these powerful abilities to come off, although you do have to deal the wounds to people. His juggling fate is probably his best ability. So it's one of these expensive super abilities that cost more than the amount of energy that he's got. But he gets 2 of the energy back, and then he gets to draw the top 3 cards of the arcane deck, look at them, and place 1 back on top of the deck, 1 on the bottom of the deck, and 1 besides this character. So the idea is and this is another theme. There's quite a few new themes that we're trying out with these characters. One of the themes is basically removing cards from the arcane deck, or arcane deck manipulation. And there's a few characters, this is the first one, where you get to remove a card. Not only do you get to sort of stack the deck, as you might have seen with young Jack previously, you get to remove a card and keep it basically alongside his stack card, and use it whenever you like. So at any point you can add it to your hand. So that's pretty useful. I mean, he gets to look at the top 3 and you can either choose to be nasty and remove a card. You know, if you're playing fairies, they rely on a lot of pinks. You can remove like a pink 3 just to mess them up, or if you know that there's a particular ability that you want to get off, you can choose that one. It's, you know, lots of flexibility again.
Yeah, definitely. Just have interest. The card that he takes and put next to his character card, is it only him that gets to use that?
No, it's you as a player get to use it.
Oh yeah, at any point you can have to remove cards.
Yeah. So any of your characters who are doing an arcane ability, you can add the remove cards to your hand, or if you're resisting, you might have removed catastrophe. You can just kind of add that to your hand at any point as well.
Yeah, that's an awesome one. Don't think I used it in the last game, but that's mainly again because I was giving the energy to Boris, because Boris was the one I was really trying to try out at the time, and it was just too much fun summoning bunnies to not keep doing it. And then lastly, he's got Butterfingers. There's the front of the card. Last, he's got Butterfingers. Target loses possession of 1 Moonstone. They're carrying and placing base contact with them at a value of 1, same as the name Butterfingers.
It's exactly the same as Butterfingers, but a little bit weaker because he's only got Arcane 3. However, we are playtesting at the moment a change to the Butterfingers ability, dropping it down to only 2 energy, which is particularly relevant for Butterfingers the Fairy, because it means he gets to do the ability twice per turn, which will increase his power level, which would be a good thing. But it'll have a knock-on effect of also helping Kavanagh. Because if he gets an extra energy onto him somehow, he could potentially make 2 people drop a Moonstone. Yeah,
that's definitely really good. Definitely useful, that one, especially like to end the game, especially if you get into a sudden death situation. Which again in the 3-player game we played, it didn't come down to sudden death, but it could have. If I'd failed my End is Nigh spell, it would have come down to sudden death. And we'd already decided that I would probably then win because I would just move Kavanagh up and cast that, and as soon as he dropped it, I then won immediately. So definitely useful in that situation. And then his signature move, which is on Rising Attack, another fun name, the Vanishing Bulls trick. Not massive damage, but it does do it against almost everything apart from low guard. So it goes 2-1.
So the idea is that his colleagues on the Leshavult side are so amused by seeing the balls vanish that they all gain energy, which is great because it's another way of triggering off all of your superpowers. You run him in and he kicks someone, and well, I don't know what he does to make the balls vanish, but there's some kicking involved. And then, like his black comedy, the idea is he gives energy. It's like C6G with his bawdy jokes. The idea is that funny characters give extra energy to others around them.
Yeah, so move on to the next one, Callista. I might need you to talk more about her. I've only played her once, and she died pretty much at the beginning of turn 2, so I've not got a huge amount of use out of her.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
it's okay. I'll leave you to talk about her more.
Yeah, I'll be fairly quick. So she's a healer. She's got like Brother Daniel, who's also a healer. She's a healer with a twist. So instead of the standard healing ability where the target restores X+1 wounds, she's got target restores X wounds, so a bit weaker, and gains protection. So protection is one of our new abilities. It's a passive ability that gets added onto the card, and it basically means the next time they take damage this turn, it's reduced to 0. So she heals people, but she also kind of protects them until the end of the turn as well. She's got, like most of the Leshavult, she's got a superpower, which is Pyroclasm. So it's a 3-inch pulse. She needs to gain an extra energy from someone to do it. Um, All models within 3 inches suffer 3 magical damage and are moved 3 inches directly away. So if you get that ability off, you just go BOW! Like all around her, and everybody goes flying and takes loads of damage. Unlike most of the other Leshavolts, she can give herself energy, or not give herself energy, but she can get lucky enough to trigger this pyroclasm. She's got an ability called Joy of Entropy. Whenever an enemy is slain, this character gains +1 energy. So if you
So is that just at the point that they're slain?
That's the point that they're slain. So you really need to kind of save her to activate later in the turn if you're hoping to get that off, and hope that an enemy character is slain at some point in the turn. If you activate her early and she gains that extra energy, it's not going to be anywhere near as useful, because all we can do is like a reaction step or a go for it or something. But if you leave her to activate late, you'll potentially get to do that awesome explosive ability. She's an interesting one. Activation order is going to be the most interesting part of playing Leshavult, because she's a healer, so you want to activate her late, and she's got this Joy of Entropy, so you want to activate her late just in case you can get off the pyroclasm. But then the other part of the Leshavit's Caress, the protection, you want to probably activate early so that you can get that on someone who you think might be attacked this turn. So there's going to be an awful lot of who do I activate first and why when playing these characters, I think.
Yeah. Definitely.
And then the other thing, last one, is she's got a dagger, but it's the same as other people's daggers. She's got Conductor. Other cultists and spirits within 4 inches gain +1 arcane stat. So she obviously comes in a box with cultists, so that's useful to Kavanagh and Brother Daniel and Lubard. But it also means if you play her with some of the characters from the Witch in Time box set, all 3 of them are spirits. So if you play her alongside those, that's quite useful. All of them get quite a nice bonus. The Revenant in the Cursed box is a spirit, and so is Anya Barthold Striga when she converts into the monster form. So can be potentially quite useful in a lot of different builds, that Conductor ability.
Definitely, I think almost particularly alongside actually sometimes the witches, actually, because they haven't got a lot of their witches, they haven't necessarily got really high arcane stats. So I mean, we'll get to the witches possibly in a bit, but they can certainly benefit from that.
Yeah. Should we move on to the witches now?
Yeah, let's do that, because I really like the witches, and I think the witches feel to me like quite a pivotal part of the Leshavult in terms of the lore, in terms of the fluff. They seem to have influenced the Leshavult for quite a long time in the narrative. Don't they? I won't go too much into the narrative because that's obviously not been sort of released yet at this point. But yeah, they certainly influence other parts of the.
Yeah, I think they Richie kind of sort of started spinning the story to me about these 3 witches quite a while ago, and that was, as you say, kind of the starting point for quite a lot of the other characters. This idea that there are 3 witches, and to be clear, the witches aren't humans; they're spirits. So although they have these human bodies, these human forms, they're not as simple as a sort of a pretty young maiden and a comely middle-aged mother and a hideous old woman. They're kind of like representations of time. It's a bit of a weird one. Zoya is kind of representing the future. Antonia is representing the present, and Danica is representing the past. So they're a very interesting trio in terms of their abilities, because there's lots of patterns basically in how their abilities, you'll see as we go through them one by one, but they've got each kind of a slightly different version of the same ability.
Yeah. So we'll start with Zoya, shall we? The Dawn Witch. So She's the melee one of the three, isn't she? So
She is,
melee.
and she's very, very scary in melee, but she's very reliant on her violent impulse arcane ability. So she doesn't have a static ability like most of the humans have got, like a big giant sword or something to chop people up with. She's got a spell called Violent Impulse, which only costs her one, and it's not once per turn, so she can cast it potentially multiple times. And it's always a bit of a dilemma, how greedy do you get? Because it triggers on pinks, and the effect is this character's melee attacks deal plus X damage until end of turn. So if you get a pink 2, she does plus 2 damage. And you can play that ability again. You know, it's not that difficult to get her up to plus 4 damage. But you've burnt through, quite a bit of your at least 2 of your energies, I would have thought, to get those super high damage. But she can be very, very scary.
And she's another one that even if you happen to get the catastrophe off, it doesn't really matter. It just means all characters within 4 deal +1, so it might mean that you get it as well, or it might mean you've activated it beforehand and she's not actually in combat yet.
Which includes her. She's a character within 4 inches. All pulses include the character, the originator. So she's only got an arcane of 2, and she's looking for pinks. But if your hand is like a green 1 and a catastrophe, you might very well decide to play the catastrophe, because giving the extra +1 melee damage to her, even though you're also giving +1 melee damage to your opponent and anyone who's anywhere near her, might seem like a good deal. And that means instead of...
And as I said before, if she's standing within 4 inches of Callister, she's arcane 3 anyway, and therefore got the slightly higher chance of getting what she wants.
But it means...
I've used go on, you go first.
Because the catastrophes are potentially useful, instead of just looking for the 6 pink cards that are in the deck, you're now looking at the 6 pink cards plus the 3 catastrophes, which means there's actually 9 useful cards in the deck. So it compensates quite a bit for the low arcane stat. Yeah.
I've only used her once so far, and what I did Violent Impulse. How did I work this out? I think I did Violent Impulse because towards the end of the turn, I didn't actually play that game very well, but there's one thing I did do quite well, which I used quite well. I did Violent Impulse. Oh, no, I know what I did. I denied her all the other side of the board. Next to healer, did Violent Impulse, and then murdered his healer in one hit. Because it didn't really matter that... I can't remember who I was hitting now, but it didn't really matter that the opponent... because I got it off correctly, so she did get like +2 damage, and I was also the attacker, so I think I managed to do like a double, but her signature move Betrayals on a high guard, managed to do like a double of that, and he played I think a high guard as well, and I ended up just doing something horrible like 8 damage all at once, or 6 damage immediately, and I just killed her straight away, which is quite funny, because she thought it was a bit of a suicide move, because she then died later on, but I kind of wanted to have a bit of fun. But you expect your healer to just be safe, and then suddenly their scariest melee person just appears next to them.
Yeah, Zoya's an absolute savage, potentially.
Yeah. And if we actually, because that's, like you said, that's something that makes her scary in combat, but I think it's worth then talking about link to the present, which is her passive ability, which is something that comes up with the other 2.
Yeah, so all of the witches have got this link to the present, link to the past, link to the future, which basically means if they have... So Zoya the Dawn Witch, if her mother, maybe she's a mother, I don't know. Certainly the slightly older witch, if she's in the troop, then Zoya becomes much more powerful. You get the same thing with Antonia the Noonday Witch. If the elderly witch is in the troop, she becomes much more powerful, and so they all kind of trigger off one another. If you've got all 3, then all 3 of them get quite good bonuses. In Zoya's case, if this troop includes the Noonday Witch, then this character gains +2 energy during the replenish step, which she really needs, because she only has 2 energy to begin with, so that puts her up to 4. and then it says if Antonia the Noonday Witch is slain, this character gains +3 energy instead. So you can't get rid of the bonus just by killing the witch that triggers the ability. It makes them even more powerful.
Yeah, which I really like that addition. It's almost like she's sort of absorbed the spirit, like part of the spirit of Antonia.
That is exactly what that is exactly how I intended it when I wrote that rule. Although Richie thinks it's funnier if they actually secretly hate one another.
Of course he does. And then she's got Swift, same as like Fencer.
Yeah.
Where she can do a two-inch reaction step, which is really useful. It's again another one of those I think possibly slightly under recognized.
Yeah, definitely.
Abilities like being able to do a 2-inch step out of combat, or into or whatever is really useful. And then visions of the future, target other friendly character, immediately suffers 1 catastrophe. So she's not the only person that can do this kind of ability.
The Revenant can do it as well.
Yeah. So she can trigger a catastrophe on someone else's card.
If you're the kind of person who likes combos, you are going to absolutely love these characters because there's so many different weird things that you can do, but they kind of require more than one character. So Visions of the Future target other friendly character. So a lot of their abilities they can't necessarily do on themselves, but they can set up other people. And you're going to think target other friendly character immediately suffers 1 catastrophe. How the hell can I use that? That sounds useless. But when you scour around all of the other characters that you can take with her, you'll notice there's actually loads and loads of times where you might find that that's really useful.
And the one that immediately sticks out to me, because it happens to be on another witch card, is Danica's Visions of the Past. All models within 6 inches suffer 1 wound, but gain 1 energy, which is just amazing.
Oh, you can. There's various.
Suddenly Boris has got the 4 energy he needs to summon Jacqueline, and Daniel's got the energy he needs to cast End is Nigh, and Kavanagh. Suddenly, all of those people can suddenly gain that extra energy they want if they're within 6 inches of her to do all those extra abilities. That's just absolutely mad.
Exactly, it's totally combo-tastic, and it's fairly well hidden on the cards. You wouldn't necessarily notice all of this stuff when you first look at them.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. So moving on, so I've mentioned her signature move already. Which is another one of those ones. It's on a guard, but does damage, which is amazing.
Again, it's stuff that's really easy to overlook when you're new to the game, but these signature moves that do damage on guards are great because you don't suffer much damage yourself. And if you look at people probably wouldn't notice this, but the damage profile on Betrayal is that of a rising attack. So you play a high guard and suffer the damage that you would have got on a high guard, but then the lower half of the card is basically a rising attack. So what it's simulating is her appearing one thing whilst doing another.
Right. Cool. That's awesome. It's also good that it impacts slicing and piercing, so it gets past those characters who can ignore impact damage or better against slicing. It's piercing. I think
that's the first one the first signature move that I've created that actually allows you to still choose, and it's because of this idea that I had about it. Actually, she's playing a rising attack, but she's making it look like and getting all the benefits of a high guard that I allowed it to keep with the impact, slicing, and piercing.
Yeah, definitely. So the next one is Antonia, the Noonday Witch. So she's got melee 3, range 1, arcane 3, and evade 0. Her link to the past, if this troop includes Danica, the Dusk Witch's character gains +2 arcane, which is awesome because all her abilities are arcane after that. And then if Danica's slain, it's +3 arcane. So it's now up to arcane 6. Which is like second highest in the game.
Yeah, it's crazy. In my last game, Richie, she was arcane 6 because Danica was dead. Then she got +1 from Callista being nearby, and then +1 for the evade of the character. And she was drawing 8 cards, 8 arcane cards. So that 3 arcane, doesn't look that impressive, but man, can she blast some powerful spells out.
Yeah. So then she's actually, interestingly, she's mainly an arcane character. So she's got healing, which is a standard healing spell, X+1 wounds. Suffering is pretty horrible. 8-inch range. It's nice long range on that actually for X+1 magical damage.
Yeah.
And catastrophe isn't, again, it's one of those catastrophes where if she's surrounded, you might just play the catastrophe.
Exactly.
It's all models within 4 suffer magical damage. So
and you might even run her into the middle of a group of people and then use Zoya's visions of the future to, trigger her catastrophe even when she's not even active.
Yeah. Or if she's got surrounded but she's still just about alive, you might think, well, she's going in a second anyway, so let's kill her off.
Yeah.
And do that, and then make Zoya better.
Yeah, so, exactly.
So Zoya, that's a horrible thing to think about. But Zoya kills her mother, but gets stronger because of it.
Yeah,
oh man,
there's some real creepy stuff in these rules.
There is, yeah. And then last one, Visions of the Present. Target suffers an amount of wounds equal to the number of wounds they've currently suffered. What's amazing about this one is if she's not suffered any wounds, the catastrophe is totally worryless.
Yeah.
This character suffers an amount of wounds equal to the number of wounds they've already suffered. So if she hasn't suffered any, you can just go in there and cast it no matter what, and you can bluff as much as you like. Because you've got a catastrophe, it doesn't matter, I don't suffer any wounds.
Absolutely.
But again, really good if someone's like, let's say, Gotchgut has already suffered 5 wounds. So you think, he's pretty safe on that because he's got loads, and she hits him with that. Suffering another 5 wounds from one spell is horrible.
I mean, most of the time when she gets Visions of the Present off, she's going to kill someone because you're going to choose an opponent who's already taken over 50% of their wounds. Someone who's got 8 wounds has already taken 5 or whatever, and you will pick people that are going to die instantly. So
yeah, because otherwise you just
9 times out of 10 that spell says blue 3 or pink 3 target is slain.
Yeah.
But it's
especially if she's got Arcane 5 or Arcane 6.
Yeah, but I wanted to make it flavorful, and the idea is that Visions of the Present, whatever is current, is amplified. So
yes, and that makes a lot of sense. Okay, and then her signature move is a very much defensive one, but interestingly, it's on a falling swing. It's no damage at all.
There's a theme, there's lots of themes that run through all 3 of these witches. At one point we discussed about whether they should be 3 separate characters or kind of like one monster on a big base, but I think it's better as 3 synergistic characters. But their signature moves called Betrayal, Deception, and Illusion. So there's a kind of a theme, and all of them effectively behave very differently from the card that they're upgrading from. So the Deception is an upgrade for a falling swing, but it's very, very defensive. It looks more like a guard. It reduces all damage suffered by -2, and it gets a follow-up attack against falling swing and rising attack. So it's like a guard, basically, but you trigger it on a falling swing, which gives her a bit more defense because she's not going to want to fight. If she finds herself stuck in a fight, she's probably going to be looking for those guard cards anyway. So it gives her 1 extra card that counts effectively for her as a guard.
Yeah, definitely. So she can basically get 4 guard cards as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So Danica's next. She's the one that's got the most disturbing looking model because she looks like a really creepy. Basically, she's a bit more like a stereotypical creepy witch, isn't she? Got a long nose and claws.
It's funny because I think all 3 of them are stereotypical witches, just in very, very different ways.
Yes, I guess so. Yeah. I see your point with that. I think I guess for me, Danica is almost like the Wicked Witch of the West kind of witch, isn't she?
She's hideous.
That kind of image. So she's melee 2, range 1, arcane 4. So got the highest arcane stat.
There's another little pattern which you might have noticed or you might not. Zoya's got melee 4, arcane 2. Antonia's got melee 3, arcane 3, and Danica's got melee 2, arcane 4. So they kind of flip. It's kind of like it twists as you go through the generations.
That was interesting. That was the first thing I noticed when I got the printout was I noticed that, and I noticed how it went 4-3-2 on the melee and 2-3-4 on the arcane. So her link is linked to the future. If the troop includes Zoya, this character restores 2 wounds at the start of the replenish step. If she's slain, she restores 3 wounds. So it's a nice little touch for her. She's got the least wounds of all 3, so she can get them back again. And then Meddle with Fate once per game. Good end of turn ability, I feel, actually, with this one, which you can get the wounds back. Draw 3 cards from the arcane deck for each spirit in play. So if they're all there, you can just take 9.
If they're all there, you can take 9. If you've got the Reverend, you can take 12. If you've got Anya, who's converted into Strider form, then you can take 15. So again, there's definitely surprise combos out there.
Yeah, then you may choose up to 3 of the cards to remove from the deck and place face down beside his character card. For each card removed, this character suffers 2 wounds and shuffle the remaining ones into the deck. Obviously, it's a bit. If you took 2, then she took 3, she's down to 1 wound. But if she's safe at the back, and then you're then going to heal her up, then that's not too bad. But yeah, I mean, removing more cards from the arcane deck. So if she's done it, and if Kavanaugh's done it, and then obviously you've got latest one, you've got Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn can do it.
Yeah, Gwendolyn can do it as well. Scry.
You can really mess up the fairies.
Yeah, fairies are particularly vulnerable to it because they rely so much on pink cards. But it can mess up anyone. If you're facing a gnome gun line, that's very reliant on greens. Some troops are very reliant on certain numbers. So a lot of these Leshavolts use all 3 of the colours, but their abilities trigger off numbers. Like these visions only work on 3s, for example. So I think it's going to be a really powerful ability in the tournament scene in a year or so's time when you get established matters that are developed and established troops that are known to be the most powerful. Then you can bring her in as a hoser to deliberately strip out the cards that those dominant troops are using. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. The way I see it as well is, yes, you've got the fairies with most of their things are on red and the gnomes are on green, but also the humans, all their healing is on blue.
Yeah.
Take out their powerful hit there, because Eric can do it on blue, and Fire Flavius and Quack, all their healing spells are on blue. They're all on blue anyway.
I mean, there's going to be a lot of collateral damage. No matter what cards you take, you're going to end up feeling the pain yourself a bit as the Leshavult player. Yeah, they do use all the colours.
Yeah.
But, there's other tricks you can do. You could take out all the catastrophes, for example. Your opponent doesn't know what cards you've taken out. You could take out all the catastrophes and potentially get a couple of turns of free bluffing before they realise what's going on. There's lots of cool tricks you can do with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then she's got Curse. The target gains Cursed. During the discard step, this character and all friendly characters within 4 inches suffer 1 wounded until the end of the game, which is pretty horrible. So you cast it on, then they're going to suffer 1 wound in the discard step every turn. So you can get that off. Well, turn 1 it might be tricky, but even turn 2 they're going to suffer it 3 times, and all their friendly characters within 4 inches as well. It could be a way of just again really good against fairies if you can get it off. She's not. It'd be hard for, I suppose, because Arcana will be dropped a bit, but they'll all be losing that energy off the top of their card.
Yeah, so they'll be losing energy in the process. I mean, it's horrible against fairies because of that reason. It's horrible against gnomes because they like to cluster up, so they're all going to suffer the wounds. It's a very horrible ability to be on the receiving end of, to be honest.
Yeah. And then the catastrophe is that this model and all models within 4 suffer 2 wounds. So again, another one that if she was surrounded, Zoya can just help us, cause 2 wounds to everyone within 4 inches again, same as suffering catastrophe. So another way of doing that, which is fun. And then her ultra powerful spell, which is the one that costs 4 with a range of 6. Well, she's only got 3 energy is Vision to the Past. So target restores all wounds and all energy, which is a bit more. And as we mentioned earlier, the catastrophe of that is all models within 6 suffer 1 wound energy. So you can either use it to completely heal someone that's almost dead, or you can use it to give everyone around you an extra energy.
Exactly. And interestingly, it's triggered on a green 3, a blue 3, or a pink 3. So there's 3 cards in the deck that can trigger the main content of the ability, but there's also 3 catastrophes. So she's actually got equally high chance of pulling off either of those 2 abilities. So it's kind of 2 abilities in one, really, that one.
Yeah.
And they're both really good.
Yeah, they are both really good, yeah. And also because it obviously could be a Leshavult. There's not a lot of Leshavult that have energy at the top, near the top of their wounds characteristic. It's usually they can afford to suffer 2 or 3 wounds before they're worried about losing energy. So
they've got fairly similar energy distribution to humans. So yeah.
And then her signature, which obviously is in line with Betrayal and Deception, is Illusion. Cast on a thrust, deals no damage at all, and with no counters, but she suffers no damage at all, no matter what.
It's very similar to the Fairy Can't Hit Me, except it triggers off a thrust instead of off a high guard. So it's actually better in a way, because it means you probably would never be playing a thrust with her. You'd be looking for those guards, but because this triggers on a thrust, you can keep her safe with 4 cards again.
Yeah, and I really like the witches. I think that it would be hard to not take all 3.
Very hard, I think. Yeah.
I'll not take all 3, and I don't have an issue with that. I think that's really fun because I do like narrative links when I'm playing games. And that's
So whilst I was just going to say, whilst you would almost certainly take all 3, there are lots of synergies that other characters have with the witches. So your witches list isn't going to be exactly the same. It's just going to have a core of 3, and then some other ones that you're swapping in and out for your other slots. Yeah. And that can be quite good fun to try out all the various different other characters that combo nicely with the witches.
I mean, saying that, with all these new Leshavult coming out and the new models coming out later in the year outside the Kickstarter, it's going to be pretty hard to choose a troop anyway, because they're all so awesome.
Oh god, it's going to get so much harder. The players so far have had it so easy, because pretty much six characters that pick themselves for your troops, depending on what race you go for. But that those days are over, I'm afraid, guys.
yeah. And there isn't even there aren't even going to be. I mean, apart from the healer, if you need a healer, but we're just slightly off topic, I suppose, but also kind of not, in the sense that in the current format at this point in time, which is the 20th of March, if you're playing fairies, you've got to take Freya because she's your only healer. If you're taking goblins, you've got to take Beaky because she's your only healer. But that's going to be that auto include option that's been there so far is going to completely disappear, because every single faction is going to gain extra healers and extra ways of doing things.
That's right.
So, which is I think is great. It's awesome. The characters are all great. They're really going to open up the game even more. So that's The End Is Nigh, and I can't remember what that trick box is called for the witches.
A Witch in Time.
A Witch in Time. That's it. I thought it was something like that. I think which one to go for next. I like doing it in troop boxes. Anyone you want to talk about?
Let's go on to. We could do the Cursed, because they follow on very nicely from the Witch in Time.
That's exactly what I was just thinking. Let's do the Cursed, because it does follow straight on from the Witches. And the Cursed are really fun, so why wouldn't you? Now, I don't know the Cursed as well. I've only played them, I think, once. So I might let you lead the discussion on the Cursed a bit more.
Sure. I mean, the reason we're saying that they follow on quite nicely is because each member of each character from the Cursed box has been cursed by one of the witches from the Witch box.
Yes.
So the Cursed are actually basically Dominion humans, and you may have heard us talking about Dominion humans. It's one of the angles that we are due to flesh out, and some characters exist. They're kind of these old money, decrepit old Georgian, flamboyant, flouncy dressed humans who were part of the ruling elite until the Commonwealth uprising that knocked them from power, and they're very bitter and twisted. You know, imagine kind of Dracula in its old tower with lightning bolts behind, and they're all, you know, creepy. It's that kind of vibe that they've got going. And the cursed box are basically Dominion humans that have been cursed by witches for being so evil. So although the witches themselves might seem evil, they obviously, you know, like a lot of Moonstone characters, it's not as clean cut as that, and they actually go around punishing people they see as being evil. So the first one is the Revenant, who is a noble human. He's Leshavult / Dominion, because he will play very nicely with the Dominion humans when we eventually release them. But he's also under the control of his patron witch, which I believe is Danica. And he's cursed with undeath. So his first ability is called Undying. Each time this character would be slain, instead restore all wounds. The version we've been testing so far has been all wounds and all energy, but that may be a little strong. So it may be that the final version is just restore all wounds. But the idea is every time you would kill him, he just immediately fully regenerates. Now, to make that not quite as horrendous as it sounds, his energy chart is flipped. So whereas most of them tend to have most of the blue dots towards the left-hand side, where they're, you know, the lower end of their energy, the Revenant's got his energy on the right-hand side. So when he's on full health, he's got 3 energy, but when he's suffered 3 wounds, he's down to 1 energy already. So you can't kill him, but you can wound him a bit to sort of, you know, disable him. And then the Revenant player's got this interesting situation where he kind of wants to suffer wounds, because as soon as he suffers the wounds, he'll regenerate back up to full and get all of his energy back. So he kind of wants to die. This is another way that I've put quite a lot of creepiness into the rules. When you're playing with the Revenant, you want him to die. He wants to die himself, but your opponent's probably going to be trying to keep him alive.
Yeah. It's a really odd juxtaposition, that. And I remember when I used him, I got him into combat with one of the pirates, and it's such a different combat. Like, I'm still trying to hurt the pirate with offensive stuff, and I can be as offensive as I like. And Jack was like, "But I don't want to hit you. I don't want to hurt you, because I might just kill you, and then you get back up again. I don't want to do that. I want to take a couple of wounds off." And it was just really, it's a really interesting dynamic in that. We had no clue what to do, because like, normally I would just play a attacking card or something, and if I had one, but I don't want to. I want to defend, but I don't want to counterattack, because then I might hurt you, and then you might get back up again.
He's a weird one, yeah. He's definitely going to mess with people's heads.
Yeah, and he's got quite. Although he's only got 1 inch range, he's quite good for like board control. I think. Like you can sit him in the middle with no worries at all, because I want you to kill me. It doesn't matter. And obviously.
I'll tell you what he's great at is being a Moonstone carrier.
Yeah,
There's 2 reasons. You can't get the Moonstone off him just by killing him, which is the normal, most common way of getting a Moonstone off someone. And what makes him even better as a Moonstone character is his signature move. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead to it. Destiny Fulfilled. He can do basically he wants to die by killing his nemesis. So you can do your signature move, Destiny Fulfilled, which triggers on a thrust. It does quite well, very high damage, and then it says end step effect. If the enemy is slain, this character is removed from play, which you might read at first thought thinking, oh no, that's horrible. You know, I can use my super powerful attack, but then this character's gone for the game. But if you're using him as a Moonstone carrier, then you might actually want him removed from play, because you've made all those Moonstones safe. So
Yeah.
so for me, Dan's mentioned a couple of times that he's a melee character. For me, he's not really a melee character. He's average, I would say, at melees.
Yeah.
What for me he is, and every troop needs they need someone who's picking up moonstones and keeping them safe. And for me, that's what this guy's main role is.
The difference between him and other good Moonstone carriers is often other good Moonstone carriers are quite defensive. So, like Tito is a great example. She can pick it up, and then you're going to find a really hard time trying to hit her afterwards. But with him, you can pick up Moonstones and then still charge down the middle.
Yeah, because
and especially if they haven't got Butterfingers, if they haven't got, I think it's Muradai can take.
Yeah, there's a few, and Kaufman and Natty, the Slum Thief, and there's a few that can steal moonstones, but
there's a few, and there's obviously good, and there's more coming up than the ones that are currently out. But if they haven't got those characters, or they're not immediately available to them, as it were, they're not close enough, you can shove him down the middle still without worrying about him having to die from. Normally you don't want to pick up a moonstone or someone and then charge down the middle because they died on the moonstone. That's the whole point of the game. But you don't have to worry about that with him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Still sit in the middle and not worry about it.
Totally. I think that's his biggest strength, personally. And it's going to encourage people to take more, because there are a few characters that can steal moonstones, and there's, as you said, there's the number of them is going to be increasing, and they haven't seen an awful lot of competitive play yet. But characters like the Revenant are going to suddenly make people take note of them a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing to mention, so he said that he's not a main melee character, but he is fairly good at it. And one of the reasons that he's fairly good at it is because I've seen it all before. So if this character's passive ability, this character is involved in a round of melee. Before each player selects their combat card, your opponent must reveal their hand. It's a bit like Intimidate, but he gets it for free all the time. He has no buffs to his damage at all, unless someone gives it to him, which I don't, top of my head, if anyone can do that. But
so seen it all before works really well when you're fighting someone who's only got about 3 cards in their hand. Yeah. It's really, really useful. But if you're fighting a dedicated melee fighter who's drawing 7 or 8 cards, then it doesn't help you that much, because you see their hand and you realise that they can play practically everything anyway. So it helps him fight weaker characters, but it's not going to make him be able to put any significant damage on a strong melee fighter.
What it is, though, is it is really annoying for your opponent.
Yeah.
It's really annoying. Like, I can't show you my hand. Oh, that's annoying.
Yeah.
Which is always just hilarious. And then he's also got visions of the future, like Azoria has, where he can make a friendly character suffer a catastrophe, which we discussed before, so we can kind of just over that.
Totally.
And then his last ability, which is an arcane, is Eternal Kill. Cost 2, 6-inch range, target suffers X magical damage and gains slow, which is quite interesting. So it's not a huge amount of damage, although it does help get through armor and things. But the gain slow is nice, I think. Reducing your enemy's ability to move around the board, I think, is really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's situationally useful. It's not a showstopper move, but it can be good.
Yeah. So next one down, and I can't pronounce this name.
Before we move on, his catastrophe, I think, is an interesting one. This character restores 1 wound. The target restores 2 wounds. So you can use that as a pseudo heal. So you can choose to play a catastrophe. You can target himself, for example, and play a catastrophe, and he restores 1 wound, and so does the target, which is him. So he can pseudo heal himself for 3.
It doesn't say enemy, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, and you could also just use it as a healing spell to heal 1 wound off a friendly character and then 2 wounds on himself.
Exactly, yeah. And you can let's say he's taken a few wounds and you know you're going to go into the next turn with no energy on him, which could very well happen, then maybe you use Zoya's Visions of the Future to trigger the catastrophe off on him and give him a self-heal for 3.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. And we discussed his signature already, so
Cool.
we'll move on to the beast. And can you pronounce the name?
No. and I think we're actually going to just drop that name and just call him the Beast. Because there's a few too many hard to pronounce and hard to remember names. So I think I'm going to rein that back in a bit and have a few.
Yeah, well, I can't imagine he'll just get called the Beast anyway because no one will pronounce the name. So.
Yeah, exactly.
So he is pretty good in melee. He's melee. So actually, start with he's human, noble, and animal, which is interesting. He's got a noble and animal keywords. He's melee 5, which is high, very high, and range 2, arcane 0, and evade +1. He's got razor claws, so +2 damage with slicing, and +1 with impact and piercing. So he's definitely a good damage dealer. I'll let you explain the rest if that's all right.
Yeah, of course. So the idea is he's really, really, really effective in melee, but he doesn't want to fight. So he's only got 2 energy. He's quite lethargic, unless he's attacked, because he's got the Awake the Beast ability. The first time an enemy targets this character with a melee attack or arcane action in a turn, he gains 1 wound. Sorry, he restores 1 wound and gains 2 energy. So if you leave him alone, he's not going to do that much to you, but if you attack him, suddenly he's a melee 5 character with +2 damage and 4 energy, who's going to rip your face off. Yeah. So it's another one of these abilities where, a little bit like Arcane Reflection on Tito, he's very often going to be extremely survivable because people aren't going to want to attack him very often.
Yeah. Go on. I'll ask a question in a second.
And then his other abilities kind of follow along in the same line. He doesn't deal much damage, but he's got the quite terrifying ability. Whenever a non-giant, non-troll enemy character ends a move within this model's melee zone for the first time this turn, it must discard 1 energy. So he can kind of, not as effectively as Boulder, but he can take energy off people by scaring them. And he can intimidate people just like Fritz. So target human or goblin suffers -2 arcane stat and gains predictable combatant. Exactly the same as Fritz's version. So he's just going to sort of storm around in a sulky kind of way, being a bit of a debuff for the opponent, but being the kind of character that will take occasional swipes at people and knock a few chunks out of them, and no one's going to want to hit him back because he's going to go into beast mode and then rip their face off.
So what I was going to ask, with the Awaken the Beast, obviously the arcane action bit's very simple, but it says when some enemy targets this character with the melee actions, does that mean if he's the defender?
It means if he's the defender, yeah. If it says melee attack
he's going to combat and they hit him.
Yeah, melee attack action specifically refers to when somebody spends energy to initiate a melee attack. So if he doesn't,
that's what I thought I'd just clarify that for anyone listening as well.
If he runs up and attacks someone, you don't awake the beast. It's only if they attack you.
Yeah, and then as you just said, kind of thinking like he's good at fighting but doesn't want to be a fighter, and that runs in with his signature move as well. Bellow, which is on high guard, deals no damage, but you move the enemy 2 inches away.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I don't think...
Leave me alone!
Yeah, I mean, it's not one of the most powerful signature moves, but sometimes these ones where you get to move the enemy away can be useful if they're guarding a moonstone, for example, and you want to get them away from it so that you can pick it up. That can be good.
Yeah. Okay, you happy we've covered the beast?
Yep.
Move on. So the next one is a very interesting one because it's a character that has 2 cards and will have 2 models. It's called Anya, and there's Anya Bartol and Strigger Anya. And again, Richie will have to tell us at some point what those mean. Because I remember discussing with him, I can't remember what they are. So basically, Anya Bartol is essentially a girl, sort of princess. Is she supposed to be a princess? Yes, so
she's one of our Dominion humans, so they're all very grand, come from grand families and live in big scary mansions in the countryside. So she's kind of a princess. We don't specifically describe her as a princess, and she doesn't have the noble keyword, at least at this version that we're playtesting at the moment. So, but she is based on the Russian princesses.
Yeah. So she has very kind of almost princessy abilities really on that one. So melee 2, not particularly high melee. Range 1, arcane 4, -1. So she's supposed to be like a little child, isn't she?
Yeah, exactly.
She's got a look of innocence, which I think is the same as Natty the Slum Thief.
It is, yeah. And it's very strong.
It is very strong, yeah. It's horrible, actually. Any model must discard 1 energy to target this model with an action. So you can do 1, 2 less melee attack actions on her than you'd like. And then she's got Swift as well. So the reaction can make a 2-inch reaction step once per turn instead of a 1-inch one. So she's quite hard to hit, which is quite a good Moonstone carrier actually when she's in that form, isn't she? And then I'll drop down actually to the arcane ability. So she's a healer. Standard heal spell, 8-inch range, costs 2 X+1 wounds. But really, what she's about is the other abilities, which is remove necklace and her signature move. And if it's okay, I'll let you describe.
Yeah, sure. So the idea is Anya wears a necklace that she's been cursed to be this Striga, this horrible monstrous spirit that's all vicious and spiteful. But she's got a necklace which contains the curse. Basically, all the while she's wearing the necklace, the curse is stopped. But she's got an ability called Remove Necklace. It's another one of these super abilities. It costs 4, even though she's only got 3 energy. But you remove this model from the board and replace it with Striga Anya. Striga Anya gains +2 energy and suffers an amount of wounds equal to the wounds suffered by this character. So basically, it costs her 4 energy. She's removed from the board, and the Striga version comes on with 2 energy. And it suffered the same number of wounds that she suffered. There's another way you can convert her into her Striga form, and that's her signature move, which is Lose Control, which is an upgrade for High Guard. And that's like a normal High Guard, but the end step effect is remove this model from the board and replace it with Striga Anya. Striga Anya gains energy and suffers wounds equal to those already on this character. So, she's taken 3 wounds and has only got 1 energy left. Then the Striga comes in with exactly the same stats.
Yeah.
And then
because I've used her once, and I transformed her into Striga Anya by using Lose Control rather than removing Necklace, and it was horrible. Because you get into combat and then Jack's just there going, "Oh God, you're going to change, aren't you?" It's like, yes, I am. Yes, I am.
I think that is the better way of doing it. Actually, is using the signature move, but it's obviously a riskier way because you've got to put your fragile little human healer into melee with someone. But I think it is the more fun way of doing it, and probably the more energy efficient way of doing it as well.
It's a really good way of doing it if she's been attacked as well, because they've had to spend an extra energy to do that attack, and then she suddenly turns into something really horrible. So it makes her slightly more worrying to go and hit in combat if she is holding a Moonstone or 2 Moonstones.
Definitely, yeah.
And like, oh, I don't really want to go and attack you, one, because it's going to cost me energy, and then you're going to turn into this horrible thing. Oh, God.
And even if you just use her as a healer who nobody wants to attack, then that's a really good healer option.
Yeah, definitely. So if we then flip over to the Striga Anya card. So actually, I think the thing to do with her is to start actually with the stick. So her signature move is like the opposite of Anya Bartol, which is the little child. So
exactly, yeah.
So this is on a low guard. It's regain control. Remove this model from the board and replace it with Anya Bartol. Anya Bartol gains energy and suffers wounds equal to those always suffered. It's the opposite, isn't it? She converts back again.
Exactly, yeah. And that can be really good if you've converted into Striga form, and because the Striga is a really, really vicious melee character. It's a total glass cannon, no defense, no damage reduction or anything like that. At high evade, she in Striga form, she's going to start suffering a lot of damage, but she put out a load of damage. To be honest, the way of imagining Anya is she's like a healer that can convert into Fritz and back again.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
I think that's awesome. I'm looking forward to playing with this one a bit more, but
it looks really fun to play. I think it's just, and again, one of those things is he's very different. It's really fun to have a character where you kind of get two characters. That's going to be really interesting, I think.
So I don't think you'd want to hang around in the Striga form any longer than you have to, because she loses Look of Innocence, she loses the heal ability, and if you've chosen her as your healer, you might have now got no healer. Evade goes from -1 up to +1, so it's a vulnerable state to be in, but it's super powerful. He's got increase all melee damage dealt by +3. Oh, no.
It's horrible, yeah.
Really nasty.
And then Blood Drinker as well on the end of that, if an enemy is slain during a round of melee, which they probably are.
Yeah. So this is the really cool thing that you can do. If the enemy is slain during a round of melee, this character gains +3 energy and restores 2 wounds. So if you kill someone and you already had 1 energy left at the point at which you killed them, then you've put yourself back up to 4 energy, which allows you to play the Replace Necklace ability, which is the exact opposite of the Remove Necklace ability that Anya Bartol's got. So you can basically kill someone and then convert back into Anya. And when you convert back into Anya Bartol gains +2 energy, which means you can do a heal. So you can drink their blood, heal 2 wounds, convert back to the little girl, and then do a heal on yourself, and basically heal yourself back up to full and be back into little girl form. So Blood Drink is really, really useful.
Yeah, and she's melee 5, so if she's the attacker in that, she's drawing at least 7 cards if she hasn't somehow been buffed in another way. So she probably is going to kill you.
I mean, effectively, she's going to probably a lot of the time be in little girl form, and then when she gets into melee, transform into the Striga form, and then most of the time manage to flip back to little girl form before the end of the melee or at the end of the melee. So she's going to be a very, very strong character and quite good fun to play, I think.
Yeah. So that's the Cursed done. I'm trying to think how much time we've got to discuss all the other ones. I wonder whether to leave some for another podcast.
We can do that. We've got obviously Boris and all the Fawns to cover, and Gwendolyn. But I'm happy to jump on another call and stitch the two together or publish them separately, whatever is best.
I think we'll do that. I think we'll leave it there. I think that's really nice to cover those 3 true boxes as they are. And yeah, I think we'll do another podcast in a couple of weeks. I think I'll release them throughout the Kickstarter. I think that'd be good. We'll have 2 Leshavult podcasts.
Cool. Sounds good to me.
That was really good fun to talk about them again. It's always nice to have a chat about the characters and things, and talk about the way they can be used. I think that's always what I hope is the most useful thing for people listening is playing advice, because I think that the Leshavult, again, unlike say humans who you've got that point click between where you talked about when we're talking about fairies, Leshavult haven't really got that. A little bit possibly with the beast and things, but even that, it's not as simple as sticking fancy hat in the middle and trying to hit someone.
I mean
the activation order is significantly important.
I think the Leshavult are going to be the second hardest to play well after the fairies. I think they're up there with fairy level complexity, but not quite as fragile. Fairies, if you mess up because you've hardly got any wounds, you can really suffer for it. Whereas these guys are sort of a bit tougher, so you can mess up your activation order and your synergies and sort of get away with it a little bit more.
Yeah, and also, yeah, they've also got some characters that are literally unkillable. But yeah, you've got things like the Beast that's got like 9 health, so he's relatively survivable.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll discuss another time, but
it's going to be quite good fun over this next 9 months or so, from between when the Kickstarter is completed and we're delivering, to get some more games in with all of these and like discover quite a few more of the combos and stuff.
Yeah, because I'm sure the other thing as well, I'm sure, well, I hope so anyway, that other people, new players discover new ways of playing, new things that maybe we hadn't seen. It's always the fun thing whenever I talk to, when I've done demos or done tournaments, talk to people who say, "Oh yeah, I did this." I was like, "Oh yeah, I didn't know you could. I didn't think you could do that."
It's like when Jack used Brothers in Arms to get young Jack up to obscene number of melee cards. I've never done that.
Yeah, he got up so high that I couldn't draw my full melee amount. He had something like 14 cards, which was amazing, and he just murdered Gotcha, I think, almost in one go.
Because the only times I've used that ability is in a gnome gun line, where I wanted it for the arcane, the +1 arcane. I wanted to get Quarrel up to arcane 5, and I wanted to get another gnome like Graddock or something up an arcane as well. So I was like, I'll just do a little bit of a Brothers in Arms exchange, so they both get +1 arcane. But I think Jack's use of using it on young Jack is probably actually a better play, more effective.
Yeah, it was absolutely terrific. I mean, like I said, it meant young Jack killed Gotcha about 2 rounds of melee really easily, because he had so many cards. He was like, "Oh, I can play 3 falling swings because I have all the high guards."
Yeah, savage.
And just destroy them. And also, and the same line of that, talking about just the same with Jack moved, using Graddock to make Graddock forget forgetfulness, which I can't repeat often enough because it's still funny.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, those little things, and that was something we talked about obviously in the Gnome podcast that came before this. So that was really interesting to talk about, and we'll definitely get on the phone again and do the rest of the Leshavult later. Anything you want to say before we call it a day there?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the only thing I was going to say is that I think in many ways we covered the most interesting material already in this call, because the fawns, I actually created the rules for those before the idea of the Leshavult even existed. So a lot of the themes that we talked about with the Leshavult, with their superpowers and whatnot, aren't actually in the fawn cards. The fawns, I think, don't need as much description. I think they kind of sell themselves on their artwork a little bit. Yeah. So basically, I'm more than happy to jump on the call and do another section on them. But I think that this one that we've just recorded now is going to be the far more interesting.
Yeah. Maybe me and Jack will about the last few ourselves. We have played all of them as well. But actually, one thing I was going to say, which I think is interesting, is that the Leshavult faction, and you're going to correct me if I'm wrong with this one, unlike Commonwealth and Dominion, they have within Leshavult, they have all of the races. They have humans, they have a fairy, they have a gnome, they have a fawn.
No goblins.
No goblins. There you go. I knew I'd forgotten that.
Yeah,
no goblins.
So they've got
they have the biggest variety of
definitely the biggest variety by far, because they've also got spirits for the first time. There's no spirits in any other faction, and they've got animal. And there are animal. Actually, that's not true. There are animals like Doug has got the animal keyword, and Billy's got the animal keyword, but they're the first ones that have animals that are just animals.
Yes, yeah, the jackalope and these. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well,
Great.
thanks a lot, Tom. That was great. That was really
Cool.
interesting. I hope people listening enjoyed that. And I hope we do another one soon. Thanks
Great.
a lot.
Thanks for having me.